Hey everyone, it's DFA, welcome back to the channel, and yes, today we are taking a look at the final ship of the Russian CV line, the Nahimova. And when you look at it, you immediately notice that there is a small difference with the other Russian CVs. This one actually has fighters. Yes, finally you can actually do something else than simply deal damage. Yeah, but wait, there is a cat. So yeah, I'm actually doing a stupid thing there. I'm being a complete troll. I'm counter-baiting, faking the bait for the enemy fighters because I need to get them removed from the game before I actually launch my planes. You will see why a bit later on. And sure enough, just when he thinks he's done it, I'm pulling back, and now I can actually focus on dealing the damage to the rest of the ships. And believe me, it is incredibly good at that. When I first recorded that video a couple of weeks ago, that was before the launch of FDR, so obviously it was back then the highest damage ship, or one of the ships with the highest DPM in the game. And yeah, FDR has superseded it with regards to that, but that does not make it any less impressive. It's still the second one on the list, and it's very aggressive. It's an incredible damage dealer. It's not uncommon to be deleting a battleship in 2 salvos, to be removing 30,000 HP in one, simply because you can play the fire and flooding game very efficiently with that thing. That's number one. And number two, because you are simply putting 14 torpedoes or 15 torpedoes on target, and that's kind of a nice way of dealing damage, isn't it? But just wait a little when we take a look at the stats, because there is a catch. It's not a free damage machine. After all, it's a bit more complicated than that. But against an isolated battleship like that, Kremlin is an absolute nightmare to be dealing with. Against other targets, it's not bad as well. Let's take a look. Yeah, and when you're dealing against DDs, you actually have 2 ways of dealing against DDs. The first one is the classical way, when a Shimakaze is giving you a nice predictable travel pattern there, just like that. You send your 15 torpedo bombers and... Yep, there you go, that was quick. And yes, when torpedo bombers are simply not an option, just like that, Holland, you also have 13 centimeters guns on each side of the ship. 16 of them. So if that sounds like a broken ship, we're going to take a look at the stats of that thing, because it's a bit more tricky than you might think. It does look broken, does look a lot like a broken ship, but it's a little bit more nuanced than that. So let's take a look at its stats. And here we have it, the Nahimova in the stats sheet next to the FDR, and indeed survivability pretty average as usual. Maneuverability, unlike the tier 6 and the tier 8 this time, it's not very good, well, it's pretty average as well. You saw the guns on the intro, there, yeah, 16 130mm guns on each side. Do not get too close to that thing when you are in a DD, because you're going to get smacked if you get detected. And finally we come to the main topic, the bombers of that thing and the firepower. Let me increase the screen size. So Wargaming decided to buff that thing in the latest patch, increasing the hangar size from 30 to 35 dive bombers. They did the same with the torpedo bombers. And essentially what that concretely means is those have a very low amount of hit points, 1600 versus, for example, the 3700 of the FDR and the 2500 of the Midway. That means that you're going to be losing them all the time, and that's essentially giving you, instead of 3 strikes, the buffed Nahimova gets 3 strikes and a half. A little bit surprising, they've also reduced the dispersion of the dive bombers, but that also reduced the accuracy of these things. When I tested it in the first time, it was 53%, and now it's 48%, so it's actually pretty average and aligned with the other tier 10 CVs, and it's still giving you a fairly decent DPM and chance of setting fire, so about 1 per minute. So we can very well play the fire and flooding game with that thing. When you take a look at the torpedo bombers, the capacity was increased as well in the last patch. And what that concretely means is, thanks to gas dive bombers, you're going to be losing most of them in your strikes, and so you actually get 3 squadrons of 5, 45 in your hangar. That's actually giving you 3 strikes. When you play that thing, assumes that you only have 3 strikes during the battle, and that's how you really have to use your planes. You have to be incredibly careful with them. You will see that in the gameplays I have chosen, because not every ship has the AA of the Kremlin. You will be meeting Hallands, Worcesters and Minos, and it's not going to go very well for your small torpedo planes. I mean, 1300 HP. Yeah, it's not going to fly very far. So the DPM is absolutely excellent, almost 17,000, superior to Malta, Midway and Haku, but way below the FDR and the Manfred, but the Manfred cannot take advantage of fire and flooding mechanics. Fighters, 1 squadron of 5, actually 3 squadrons as well, because you guessed it, the HP is also super low, although their damage is actually not that bad. So what that concretely means is you will lose them every single time in a dogfight. And it's not a bad idea to actually sacrifice them to keep the enemy fighters busy while your bombers make their way to their target. Finally, the AA, pretty decent for a Russian CV. Let's take a look at that thing in action. Yes, and I have chosen to show you 2 gameplays this time. This was one of my first gameplays with the ship. I was facing a Midway, and you see that the matchmaking is very good too, as there is only 2 AA ships on the enemy team, 2 American ships, Seattle and then Ohio. And the Ohio, it does have really good AA, but it's not Worcester or Halland-like. So it's a fairly good matchmaking for that thing. We absolutely have to watch out for the Midway, because as we have seen in the stats sheet, and you will see that later in that gameplay, absolutely not a chance in a dogfight. And you absolutely cannot send your planes once there are enemy fighters in the air, because I guarantee you, with only 1700 hit points per plane in all of your squadrons, none of them will make it, or at least they will not make it to the target, and those who happen to make it will certainly not make it back, and that's it. You've already lost one of your strikes. So yeah, you have to be incredibly careful when you play that thing. And there you see there are, the enemy CV, it's not doing a very good job indeed. It's not trying to attack my plane. So what I'm going to do is, I'm usually not going immediately after destroyers with that thing, because I'm simply, unless I have a very good opportunity shot, like here for example, that guy absolutely not looking at me, and it's a fairly easy thing. But that's how you deal with the fighters, by the way. Since you cannot dogfight them, you absolutely have to bait them. And while he was busy with my squadrons, I've managed to set the Kurfürst on fire and to deal, I would say, to send half of my torpedoes onto that Italian DD, and my team finishes off, and that's a very good start for me. I've taken out one squadron of fighters for the Midway. The Grosser Kurfürst has probably used its damage control kit, and we have helped removing one enemy DD from the battle, so that's actually pretty good. Now I'm going to follow up on that Grosser Kurfürst. I did not check if he had been using its damage control kit, so I don't know. I'm going to send my dive bombers first, and immediately the torpedo bombers are going to follow. Because there you actually have to hit him with all that you have, and send your planes as close to one another as you can, because otherwise you're simply not going to, none of them is going to make it back. And that's annoying. That's what you absolutely have to avoid, because it means that that's a triple fire, that's amazing, but now it's just damage con, and that's annoying. And I cannot play too much with my torpedo bombers, because its fighters are in the air. I have to be quick. And you see me, there you go. I still managed to get 12 torpedoes on target, and like 13 of them, and the last flight floods him, and we're going to simply be following our ratio of 30,000 damage per strike. It's absolutely insane the amount of damage that you can deal per strike with that thing, but you have to be super careful, because there we actually lost almost all. I think we lost every single one of our planes, actually. I should maybe look it back, but it's completely unforgiving. And so we're going to go for the other German ship, because if they don't have any AA and they're isolated and there's absolutely nothing to be protecting them, it's an invitation to be striking them in the face. And so yeah, you guessed it, that thing is very matchmaking dependent, and when you have that kind of matchmaking, two German ships in a very wide map, not a central control or an epicenter where they typically tend to be near other concentration of ships. So there you go, there I'm actually sacrificing my fighters to make sure that my torpedo bombers have a free lunch on that Friedrich der Grosse. But you see what's going to happen. I'm going to lose my fighter squadron, so my torpedo bombers can actually all make it to the target. I'm certainly going to be flooding that poor Friedrich because yeah, it doesn't stand a chance. Yeah, that's going to be... Yeah, I don't even need to put my 15 torpedoes on target, you know, 11 is more than enough to cause a flood. And yeah, this time my planes are actually able to make it back to the CV. So you really have to care a lot for them. And yeah, we've actually sent our 3 strikes of the game. We still have planes for a number 4 strike, and we've already reached the big caliber, so yeah. The fighters are nowhere near in a position to be annoying, and you've seen that the fighters of the Midway are almost at full strength. So I'm going to send another squadron of fighters to keep them busy, and I'm going to see what that concretely means. Can we actually take down one plane of a Midway in a dogfight? Let's take a look. But so yeah, what that concretely means is these fighters are absolutely not meant to dogfight. They're really meant to be baiting enemy, yeah, sure enough. So we did take a couple of planes, but yeah, that... yeah, it's really not a dogfighter, that thing. It's absolutely useless. And yeah, it's really, they're really meant to either be sacrificed or they're meant to be baiting, so you can actually deal some damage there. Sure enough, changing target, have to attack that Seattle, not my preferred option, but yeah, I don't really have a choice. They're already up in the air, and yeah, I'm going to send them in a way that most of them can actually only fly once over that Seattle. And sure enough, they might actually be able to make it back home. Sure enough, that's it. Another flood. Wow. So yeah, when the matchmaker is going your way and the enemy CV is not absolutely trashing your fighters and your other planes, you can actually have a very good game with that thing. And you probably guessed it, but the next gameplay that I'm going to show you will be with a different scenario, where we actually have a matchmaking that is a little bit more tricky to manage. So this one, it's just an invitation for the Nahimova to just be deleting everything, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. Let's see if we can actually spot the enemy CV before, yeah. No, I'm going to, yeah, he spotted, so that's good, and I'm going to go for that Ohio, because my 3 battleships are going to take care of the enemy CV. And that's where you see how unforgiving that thing can be, because the Ohio, it's a ship with a good amount of AA, it's an American battleship. But let's see how many planes are actually making it back, and yeah, it's not going to go very well. But let's take a look at it. So, because yeah, that's really the best case scenario when you engage an American battleship in that game. It's absolutely isolated, but there you go, the first squadron gets it. That's 4 hits, but it's also already out. The second one makes it as well, that's good, but the third one I had to pull it back because the first one caused a flood. So I'm simply going to sacrifice it and see if I can actually flood him again and set him on fire. And yeah, you have to play the fire and flooding game all the time with that thing. Can they actually make it to the target before it's the end of the game? Can actually, yeah, that's first one taking out, and we shoot 4 torpedoes. We flood him again, but we're not going to be able to enjoy it. That would have been a 125,000 damage game. So there you go, that was the Nahimova when everything goes your way. And now let's take a look at it in a set of different circumstances. And this time, oops, Worcester and a Mino. Yep, and it's a map where ships are actually usually packed into 2 distinct groups, so there's a very good chance that one of the groups is protected by the Worcester and the other one by the Mino, and we will have to be super careful with this. So I'm playing with Ron here from the Serenissima, and actually, yeah, well, first thing, that there we have to be careful. There we have to be incredibly careful. I absolutely want to make sure that the enemy fighters are removed from the game before I'm actually committing my planes. And I'm going to play this game a little bit more like I've shown you how you have to play the Serov and the Pobeda, except that I do not really need to wait for one of my ships to set them on fire. There you go, dogfight right on top of the Friesland. Yep, but I'm not sending my planes. I want to get a clear idea of what the enemy team is up to. Your fighters are actually fairly good at taking down other bombers, so yeah, there you go, the Worcester. Yeah, it's still a little bit too close to the Germans, so I'm going to wait a little. There's still too much of a concentration there, but yeah, the Kurfürst, no, it's too dangerous, and the Mino is closing in, so it's too dangerous. The Worcester there, it's just going to wipe the floor with my planes. I'm going to lose my strike, but there I have a window. There I might have a window there. Colombo is also a target, but it's also too far away from the rest of the team, so I'm going to go for the Kurfürst because the Worcester is actually a little bit too much behind it, and it has just been set on fire. And that's a real invitation for that thing. The Minotaur is also going away, so that's amazing that we get a clean strike, but no, the Mino is pulling back. The torpedo bombers are going to have to go right on top of it, and let's see how many of... and the Worcester is yeah, the first squadron gets deleted, the second one sends 2 planes, and the third one 6. So yeah. So, but we do cause a flooding because of the ridiculous amount of planes that we're able to throw into the air, but that's a typical use case for the Nahimov, which is very, very dangerous, yeah. You've seen it here. You've seen it live right in front of you. You can, when you're into that kind of matchmaking, you have to assume that you can only send 3 strikes to the enemy team. 3 strikes, because that's all you will have, really. So you really have to be incredibly careful. And then I'm going to go to the other side of the screen, because yeah, I did remove the enemy fighters from the equation. That's good that Colombo has been set on fire, flooded. He's actually damage gone, so yeah, it's... Again, that's really what you have to watch out for. And you know, if you remember, I told you, like, when you play the Serov, especially for the Serov, because the Serov does not have a lot of firepower. Pobeda, it's actually quite decent, but the Pobeda, you have to watch for fires and floods, because and damage control kits, because it's really a fire and flooding game with that ship. This one, the first thing is you notice that it's a tier 10, and at tier 10 a lot of ships are actually able to cause fire and flood, so you don't have to be as, how would you say, oh shit, that was... You see, I lost track of him and I'm sending my planes, and how many strikes are we going to get this time? So we still managed to get 10 of them, and we flood that poor Colombo, but sure enough, yeah, and we managed to bait the Midway fighters once again. We're going to have the fight on top of an American battleship once again, that's good. But you see the difference. I'm having a fairly good game with my fighters. The Midway doesn't care. He's got 5 squadrons in his hangar. I only have 3, so I cannot afford to lose one. I have to be incredibly careful. What I'm going to do there, I'm not attacking that Minotaur for the sake of it, but I simply want to send my bombers his way to make sure that he remains spotted, because it's going to be right in front of my battleship and 1 cruiser. And yeah, that's going to be a complicated thing for the Minotaur to manage. Unfortunately, we cannot really protect that Henry. And yeah, that's where it gets a bit tricky. So you know that thing has an absolute insane amount of firepower. When it comes to dealing with destroyers, I mean, those 16 Smolensk guns on each side of the ship, that's actually a fairly good thing, even though they reload a little bit slower and they deal a bit less damage. But yeah, sure enough, I do something. I was thinking that I would be fast enough and that the island would be protecting me, but no, we barely make it out alive, and we survived. We survived the Shima fucking, but you know, the intro I was showing you a Shima that I was actually getting completely crapped. This time it's going to be my turn. I'm going to turn around because I think that he's actually shot his torpedoes, and now it's my time to test my 16 guns, because yeah, once they've shot their torpedoes, and you know that thing is going to take him like 90 seconds to reload a full batch of torpedoes, so you're pretty safe. Certainly we're going to be able to flood him as well, because we don't need to get as many strikes on it. And I'm thinking, yeah, I'm going to punch him in the face with my guns. I'm going to keep him spotted with my dive bombers. And sure enough, you can guess how that's going to end. So yes, it's a he still had 1 batch of torpedoes. I'm going to flood him again for the last time. Okay, so the good news is we still have 1 minute and 20 seconds to talk about that thing, because and to complete the review of the Soviet CV line. So that was a stupid mistake from me. Yes, you are absolutely right. Negative indeed. But jokes aside, it's actually a fairly good play if you are absolutely certain that the enemy DD has shot all of its torpedoes, because that thing, as you've seen, it's able to delete a DD in about 20 seconds. So and DDs are typically not expecting that, they're not used to facing that ship again. So Nahimov actually fairly balanced, because in a typical tier 10 matchmaking, it's going to be a lot closer to this than it was to the previous game, and you will have to be incredibly careful with your firepower, because as I said, you only get 3 strikes to kill them all. And if you don't manage your planes well, if you don't manage to avoid AA bubbles, 3 strikes is all you will be getting, I guarantee you that. So all in all, the Nahimova looks completely broken on paper, but it's a little bit more complex than that in real life. It's very much making dependent, of course. If the enemy CV knows what he's doing and is able to manage his fighters, probably you will have a very hard game. So for the love of God, do not start your career in playing CVs with that line, because it's extremely unforgiving. It's a fun line, I really enjoyed it. Serov was a little bit weak, Pobeda was actually quite fun. This thing is also very fun, but it's also incredibly tricky. And that concludes my review of the Soviet CV line. I hope you enjoyed it, learned a couple of interesting things. Stay safe, take care, that was DFA signing out. Bye bye!